Hello and welcome to Cooking with the Wooden Spoon. Today's recipe is the recipe that I have most wanted to have on this channel. It is the most cherished recipe that I have. In fact, there's really no recipe for it. I think I have shared with you before that I lost my mom when I was 10, so I don't have a lot of memories of her, but one of the memories that I do have is making chicken noodle soup with homemade noodles with her. It's not the most difficult soup, but for me, it's the most special soup. I make this all the time for my kids. Each of them can tell you right now there is frozen chicken noodle soup in their freezer just in case they get sick. I always make sure they have chicken noodle soup at at their disposal. So it's just a really special recipe. I have memories of my kids helping me make chicken noodle soup, and those are really good memories. I'm wearing my mom's necklace today, one of my cherished possessions. So we're going to have just a special time today. I have already roasted the chicken. The awesome thing about this soup is you can get a roaster chicken from Piggly Wiggly, or you could use chicken breast diced. You could cook chicken in a slow cooker in chicken broth or stock and use that. You can use anything you want. You can actually use turkey as well. This is a really awesome recipe for leftover Thanksgiving turkey. It's it's pretty user friendly. Um, Definitely the star of this recipe is the noodles. Again, I have no recipe, so today we are figuring out the recipe together. It's something that I never have done, but I definitely want this recipe to be on the channel as a legacy recipe. I hope that my kids make this. I was hoping to get through this video without crying, and I failed. Uh, anyway, food can be just so special and so comforting and bring back memories. Smell is one of those senses that when you smell something, it just takes you back. So I hope that this recipe is as special for you as it is for me. The first thing we are going to do is make a well in some flour, and then we'll make these noodles from scratch. From there, you'll see how easy they are. You have this stuff all the time in your pantry. So let's go ahead and get started. So for the soup, other than the roaster chicken, which I did a 4-pound whole chicken. Make sure when you get whole chickens for this recipe, or most soup recipes, that you don't pick up a fryer chicken. I've made that mistake before. Fryer chicken, they add oil to the whole chicken, and it just ends up changing the flavor and texture of your soup. So we have 1 4-pound whole chicken roasted. I reserved the chicken broth from that. Plus, I'm using the bones and I'm making more chicken broth for this soup. It does require a pretty nice amount of chicken broth because the noodles tend to soak up the broth, which is great because then the noodles have amazing flavor. So we need that, and then this is 1 medium-sized onion diced, 3 celery stalks chopped, and 3 carrots diced, chopped. You can make those as big or as small as you want. I actually like them a little bit bigger in this soup than I do in a lot of soups. Don't know why. A lot of the things that I do, I guess, is just because that's the way I've always done it. So for the noodles, I've started out with 4 cups of flour, and we will see how close to correct that is. I make a well with my measuring cup or with my hands, whatever I'd like. And this well is where we will put the eggs and the salt and the pepper. So I usually do 6 or so eggs with this amount, but noodles and bread react differently depending on the weather. So sometimes I end up having more. Look at me, not paying attention. I can't do 2 things at once. So the eggs go in here. Sometimes I end up using more eggs, and sometimes I end up using less eggs. So we're going to start out with 6, and then we'll mix some and see what the texture is. The really awesome thing about this is it's not super precise, and you can vary it according to your taste. Okay. I always put the salt and the pepper in the eggs because I feel like as we mix the salt and pepper in, I'm going to say this is a good teaspoon of salt. I don't put salt in my broth. If you do put salt in your broth, or if you use a boxed or canned broth from the store, you can do less salt in the noodles, definitely. And then I'm going to say about a teaspoon of pepper as well. So, as you all know, I really like my pepper. So I would be curious. There are so many things that I can't ask my mom now and wish that I had, but did she put a lot of pepper in? I don't know. She might have put a lot of pepper in, but we're doing it how we like it. The really great thing about this is you don't need a fancy noodle maker. You don't need a KitchenAid mixer. You just need a fork. So I like that in a recipe. This does take a while to mix to get to the right consistency, and for me that's okay. Part of the beauty of this soup is really the process. The taste is comforting and the taste is amazing too, but I just really like this process. This is a soup where your hands will get messy, so definitely wash your hands before you do this. And again, that's okay. So I'm going to continue to stir this, and as I stir it, I'm bringing in a little bit more flour from the outside. I had to intentionally say flour because usually my Pittsburgh accent, I just say flour. Matt likes to make fun of me, but he says it too. Anyway. Today I'm using store-bought eggs again. I really need to call Dan, our amazing egg man, and have him bring some more eggs. I've been on a breakfast pocket kick. I don't know if you've seen the breakfast pocket video from this channel, but I love those breakfast pockets. So I've been using my eggs for that. I found that whenever we went to Wyoming a couple of weeks ago or last week, the breakfast pockets were really perfect for travel. I really enjoyed having that and not having to worry about the hotel breakfast, just having something that I could count on that I know is not going to make my stomach hurt. It was really nice to have. So if you haven't checked out the breakfast pocket recipe yet, definitely check out the breakfast pocket recipe. We're getting closer. You may be able to hear my boiling water or my boiling broth on the stove. After I took all of the stuff off of the bone, I just put the bones back in the pot and added water, and I'm making broth for this soup. So we're just about to the point where we will start using our hands, and I like when we get to that point. I like also using, I use these bench scrapers. I don't know if you have these. They're useful for so many different things. Mainly I use the bench scrapers as a shovel of sorts, where I will chop and then use this one particularly, the bench scraper, to pick up the goodies. So I like to use these to incorporate for as long as I can. One of two things. It does keep the really gooey stuff off of my hands, and I have found that I'm able to maintain more noodles this way because I am not washing as many noodles off of my hands. So, hi Bo, how are you doing? Today I discovered that Bo likes carrots again. When he was a puppy, he loved carrots, and then he went through, I don't know, phase or whatever, where he spit the carrots out when I gave them to him. But today he was standing here and I gave him a carrot and he ate it, and I gave him another one and he ate it. We'll see if it agrees with him, but kind of fun. My grandpup Violet, she surprises me sometimes. She loves cucumbers, which is funny. She is treated with a lot of carnivorous things at Seth's, but when she comes to Grammy's, Grammy treats with vegetables because that's what I have around the most. But she really loves cucumbers, and I just think that is the cutest thing. So you can see we're starting to really form a nice dough. This flour is going to be incorporated into our noodles one way or another. I like to have a lot of flour on my noodles as the noodles dry. They will sit on the counter for a little bit and dry out a little bit before I cook them. And if I have extra flour around the perimeter, you'll see when we get to that point. It just makes the process a lot easier. So when I write out this recipe, I think I will say 3 to 4 cups of flour, and I would say a good 3 cups are going into this, and the other will be used the other way. So we're just about to the point where we can roll it out. So I'm squeezing it because I'm trying to see how much moisture there is in it. If there's too much moisture when I go to roll it out, it'll be too sticky and it won't keep its form. But I think we're looking pretty good. Again, this is a recipe where it's not super precise. If you end up starting to roll your dough out and it's too sticky and you don't feel like kneading it anymore, just sprinkle more of the flour and roll it out that way. So It's really awesome. I'm going to wash my hands and then come back and we'll roll this out together. Okay, next step is just to roll out our noodle dough as thin or as thick as you like. I kind of like mine a little bit thicker. And then I make the pieces smaller, if that makes sense. We'll see together here in a second. So for my kids, just a little hint, when you're rolling, kind of start in the middle and work your way out. That keeps the noodles pretty even. So I guess for my kids or anybody else who is rolling these out for the first time. So here is about the thickness that I do. So pretty easy. Next, I just use a pizza cutter to cut the noodles. It's easy. It doesn't matter if they're all the same size. I find it kind of fun in your bowl to have different size noodles. So this is where the extra flour comes in handy, because what you're going to want to do is separate out the noodles and have them in the flour. These will rest on the counter for maybe an hour. During that time, we will move over to the stove and we will put together the rest of the soup. And that's pretty easy too. None of this is super difficult. It just takes time. And honestly, that's one of the things that I like about this soup. I love soothing soups that are multiple steps because I just find it relaxing. Even this is relaxing. Bring a little bit of the flour over from here. I do have a step that I started doing more recently. See, my noodle here is a little bit thicker than the other part, so I'll just make sure that I cut these a little bit smaller. But one thing that I have started doing is before I put the noodles in the broth, I've been sifting out the excess flour. That tends to help with the soup thickness, because as the soup sits in the refrigerator, it'll get thicker for the next, several days, however long it takes you to eat it. So if you have the extra flour taken out, then you're getting more of the broth, which is awesome. So again, this doesn't take super long, but if you don't like this kind of thing, it might seem tedious to you, but I am a big fan. So again, you can tell that I'm really just kind of working through these without much care on how even they are. If you would like your soup to look fabulous and all of your noodles to be the same size, then you can take all the care that you would like in cutting the noodles. So there you go. I can remember coming home from school different days and then seeing this noodle extravaganza all over the kitchen table, and knowing that we were going to have an amazing chicken noodle soup for dinner. So, just a fun thing to come home to, and even the smell of the soup when it's cooking just really brings me back. So there we go. We're going to move over to the stove and do a couple things there. The next step to our soup is we are going to put in 1 stick of butter, our onion, our carrots, and our celery. And we're just going to let those cook down until they are pretty tender. I do typically add a little more salt and pepper when I do this part of the process, just so that the flavor is in all of the bites. We're looking pretty good with our mirepoix. I did add 1 tablespoon of dried parsley as well. If you wanted to add fresh parsley, you would add that toward the end. But today I'm using dried, so I put it in toward the beginning so that the flavors could infuse very well. A few more minutes on this and we should be good to go. This is exactly how we want our veggies to be. Perfect. You can tell a difference in their color. You can certainly tell a difference in the texture as well. So our next step is to add, I'm going to make sure that the texture is perfect, but our next step is going to be adding our chicken and our broth. Pretty easy. Yep, texture is perfect. We're good. Okay, so earlier today we talked about the fact that I was making broth from the chicken. So I'm just pouring that in. Nope. Perfect. And then we have our chicken. We're going to let this come to a boil, which won't take too long because our broth was pretty hot. So I know it seems like an exorbitant amount of broth, but the noodles will soak up so much of the broth. And I really like to have brothy chicken noodle soup, especially whenever you don't feel well. That broth is what really is healing and rehydrating. So we're going to let this cook for about a half an hour, and then we're going to add our noodles. We're almost done. It is going to be so good. So the next step that I do is I strain the noodles. So you can strain them with your hands. I think it's way easier to use this little mesh thing. I think this is one of the cases where the handy spatulas would be beneficial. So anyway, usually I just take a plate to catch the excess flour. That way, whenever I'm cleaning up at the end, I have a lot of flour on the plate and less on the counter, and I can just take the plate over to the garbage. But this is rather easy. We're going to take the noodles and we're going to put them in our stock pot on the stove. And then they will cook for, I'm going to say, a good half of an hour. You want to make sure that the middle of the noodles is cooked, and you just do that by taking one out, biting it in half, and seeing if the middle is cooked. Here we go. We're just going to put these in our pot at the stove, and that's the last step for the soup other than enjoying it. Our soup is looking really good. You can tell that the whole consistency or shape of the noodles has changed. They've lightened. They are fluffy. If you cut one apart and you see two different colors on the inside, that means it needs to cook a little bit longer. If you cut one apart and it looks like it's pretty much the same color throughout, then your noodle is done and you're set. So these are set. Just mixing it up really well. Pretty excited. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you. If you're lucky enough to still have your mom, thank her. This soup is just the most special recipe that I have, and I am just thrilled to be able to share that with you. My mom passed away from breast cancer. She had 2 battles with it. She was such a force of strength. So we dedicate the soup to her. This is what love tastes like.